The pregnancy test dropped from her trembling hands and clattered onto the marble floor. Maya stood frozen in the bathroom, staring at those two pink lines that would either save her life or destroy it. Outside the door she heard footsteps, heavy, angry footsteps. They knew. Somehow they already knew. And in that mansion in Houston, Texas, being caught pregnant with the dying man's child wasn't just scandalous, it was dangerous. But let me take you back to where this whole nightmare began, because Maya's story didn't start with that pregnancy test. It started 3 months earlier, when desperation brought a poor girl from South Los Angeles into the home of one of the richest black families in Texas. Maya Johnson was 22 years old and broke. Not the kind of broke where you skip Starbucks for a week. The kind of broke where your mama sells oranges on Crenshaw Boulevard in the scorching heat just so your little brothers can eat dinner. The kind of broke where dropping out of community college isn't a choice, it's survival. Her father had left when she was 9, and since then life had been one long, exhausting fight just to keep the lights on. So when her cousin Tasha called her one Tuesday morning and said, "Girl, I know a family in Houston looking for a caregiver and they're paying serious money," Maya didn't even hesitate. "How serious?" Maya asked, already mentally calculating rent, groceries, and her brother Jamal's asthma medication. "Enough to change your life, sis, but you gotta act like you've done this before. They want someone with experience," Tasha said. Maya had never taken care of anyone in her life except her own chaotic family, but she was a good liar when she needed to be. Desperation makes you creative like that. 2 days later, she was on a Greyhound bus from Los Angeles to Houston with everything she owned stuffed into one worn duffel bag and a head full of prayers. The Whitmore estate sat on the outskirts of Houston like a monument to old money and new power. When Maya first walked through those iron gates, her mouth went dry. The driveway alone was longer than her entire block back home. Fountains, gardens, columns, this wasn't a house. This was a whole different world. A tall, elegant woman with cold eyes and a tight smile met her at the door. This was Victoria Whitmore, the wife. "You're the girl Tasha sent?" Victoria asked, looking Maya up and down like she was inspecting spoiled fruit. "Yes, ma'am, my name is Maya Johnson. I'm here for the caregiver position," Maya said, keeping her voice steady even though her heart was pounding. "You've done this kind of work before," Victoria's tone was sharp, searching for cracks. Maya lied smoothly. "Yes, ma'am, I've worked with elderly clients in Los Angeles. Medication management, mobility assistance, meal preparation, all of it." Victoria studied her for a long moment, then smiled slightly. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who just found exactly what they were looking for. "Good, you'll take care of my husband, Richard. He's very sick. Terminal, actually. The doctors say he has maybe 6 months left, probably less. If anything happens to him under your care, you'll be held responsible. Do you understand?" The words hit Maya like ice water, but she nodded. "I understand, ma'am." "Follow me," Victoria said, turning on her expensive heels and walking down a hallway lined with family portraits. Maya followed, taking in everything: the crystal chandeliers, the art on the walls, the thick carpet under her feet. But she also noticed something else. In every single portrait, Richard Whitmore stood surrounded by women. His wife, 5 daughters, not a single son among them. Victoria stopped in front of a large bedroom door and knocked twice before opening it. "Richard, your new caregiver is here," she announced in a voice that was suddenly softer, almost fake. The man sitting by the window looked nothing like the powerful figure in those portraits. Richard Whitmore was maybe 60, but sickness had aged him 20 years. His hands trembled on the armrests of his wheelchair, and his one strong frame had withered to skin and bone. But his eyes were still sharp, still alive, still burning with something that looked like hunger. "Good morning, sir," Maya said softly, stepping into the room. Richard turned his head slowly, studying her with those intense eyes. "Who are you?" "My name is Maya. I'm here to help you, sir, whatever you need." He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded and turned back to the window without another word. Victoria gave Maya a list of instructions that felt more like warnings, then left her alone with the dying man. "Hey my people, if you're already feeling this story, do me a favor, drop a like right now and hit that subscribe button to join this storytelling family. Comment below and let me know where you're watching from, because we're building something special here. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Now let me tell you, those first few days were rough. Maya had lied about her experience and it showed. She burned his oatmeal so badly the smoke alarm went off. She gave him the wrong pills at the wrong time and nearly sent him into a panic. She struggled to help him from his wheelchair to his bed, almost dropping him twice. Every mistake felt like it might get her fired and sent back to that dead-end life in LA. But Maya wasn't a quitter. She watched YouTube videos late at night learning proper caregiving techniques. She asked questions, took notes, and pushed through her exhaustion, and slowly, day by day, she got better. And something else started happening too. Richard began to talk to her. At first, it was just small things. The oatmeal is better today, or thank you for the water. But then, as weeks passed, the conversations grew longer and deeper. He told her about building his business from nothing, about the deals he'd made, the enemies he'd earned, the empire he'd created with his bare hands. And he told her about his regret. One evening, after she'd helped him into bed and was about to leave for the night, Richard grabbed her hand. His grip was weak, but his voice was strong. "Maya, do you know what it's like to have everything and still feel empty?" She didn't know what to say, so she just listened. "I have 5 daughters," he continued, his voice cracking slightly. 5 beautiful daughters, but not one son, no one to carry my name, no one to continue what I built. When I die, everything I worked for will crumble. My wife will sell it all. My daughters will fight over the scraps, and my legacy will be nothing but dust." Maya squeezed his hand gently. "I'm sorry, Mr. Whitmore." He looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "You're the only person in this house who treats me like I'm still human. Everyone else is just waiting for me to die." Those words hit Maya hard because she'd already seen it. The way Victoria's eyes lingered on jewelry catalogs, the way the daughters whispered and calculated in corners, the way Richard's oldest daughter's boyfriend kept asking, "How much longer does he have?" This family didn't love him, they loved his money. And Maya, the poor girl from South LA who was just trying to survive, was about to become the most dangerous person in that house. Because 3 weeks later, Richard Whitmore made her an offer that would change everything. "I want a son, Maya. Before I leave this world, I want to know that someone will carry on my name, and I want you to give me that gift." Those words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot, and Maya felt like the walls were closing in on her. She stood there in Richard Whitmore's bedroom, her hands trembling, her mind racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. This rich, dying man had just asked her, a poor girl from South LA who cleaned his bedpans and fed him oatmeal, to have his baby. "Sir, I don't understand," Maya stammered, even though she understood perfectly. Richard's eyes were steady, pleading, "I think you do. I'm asking you to carry my child, a son who will inherit everything I've built. I'll make sure you and your family are taken care of for life. You'll never struggle again, but I need this, Maya, I'm begging you." Maya took a step back, her heart pounding. "Mr. Whitmore, this is crazy, your family." "My family doesn't love me," Richard cut her off, his voice cracking. "They're vultures waiting for me to die so they can pick my bones clean, but you're different. You treat me like I'm still human. I trust you." Maya wanted to run. She wanted to grab her duffel bag and catch the next Greyhound back to Los Angeles and forget this conversation ever happened. But then she thought about her mama's tired face, her little brother's empty stomachs, and the eviction notice that was probably already on their door back home. "I need time to think," Maya whispered. "Take all the time you need," Richard said softly. "But Maya, please don't tell anyone about this conversation. If my wife finds out before we're ready, she'll destroy both of us." Maya nodded and left the room, her legs barely holding her up. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in her small bed in the staff quarters, staring at the ceiling and wrestling with the biggest decision of her life. This wasn't just about money. This was about bringing a child into a war zone, because that's exactly what this mansion would become if she said yes. By morning, Maya knew she needed to hear her mother's voice. She waited until her lunch break, then snuck out to the garden where she had cell phone service and dialed home. Her mother, Carol, answered on the second ring. "Baby girl, how are you doing? We miss you so much." Carol's warm voice came through, and Maya almost broke down crying right there. "Mama, I need to talk to you about something serious," Maya said, her voice shaking. "What's wrong? Did something happen? Are you okay?" Carol's concern was immediate. Maya told her everything: Richard's condition, his request, the money he was offering, the danger she'd be walking into. She left nothing out. The line was quiet for a long moment. Then Carol spoke, and her words were careful and wise. "Baby, I can't make this decision for you, but I'll tell you what I know. We've been poor our whole lives, and poverty is its own kind of prison. If this man is offering you a way out for our family, that's something powerful. But you've got to ask yourself, can you live with this choice? Not just today, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now." "I don't know, Mama," Maya whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Then pray on it, baby, and whatever you decide, I'll support you. I love you no matter what," Carol said. Maya hung up and sat in that garden for another hour, thinking and praying and trying to find clarity in the chaos. 3 days later, she walked into Richard's room and said 2 words that would change everything. "I'll do it." Hey my people, I need you to pause for just a second and hit that like button if you're feeling this story. Subscribe to the channel because things are about to get dangerous and you don't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have said yes if you were Maya? Alright fam, let's get back to it because Maya's decision was about to unleash hell. Richard's face lit up like someone had just given him a miracle. He grabbed Maya's hands with his trembling grip and tears streamed down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me hope." What happened over the next few weeks was clinical and quiet. Richard arranged everything through his private doctor, someone he trusted completely who asked no questions. There was no romance, no pretense of love. This was a transaction and both of them knew it. Maya went through the process with a strange mixture of fear and determination, and then she waited. Meanwhile, the Whitmore mansion was like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Victoria, Richard's wife, started watching Maya like a hawk. She'd appear in doorways without warning, her cold eyes tracking every move Maya made. She started asking questions too. "How long have you been working here now, Maya?" Victoria asked one morning, her tone deceptively casual. "About 2 months, ma'am," Maya answered, keeping her voice steady. "And you're taking good care of my husband?" Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, ma'am, I will do my best," Maya said. Victoria stepped closer, invading Maya's personal space. "You know, it's interesting, Richard seems much happier lately, almost like he has something to look forward to. Do you know anything about that?" Maya's heart raced, but she kept her face neutral. "I just try to keep him comfortable, ma'am, that's all." Victoria stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment before walking away. But Maya knew that woman suspected something. The daughters were even worse. They treated Maya like a slave, making her work twice as hard as any normal caregiver should. Diane, the oldest, was the cruelest. "Maya, clean up this mess," Diane would snap, pointing at something she deliberately spilled. "Maya, my father needs his sheets changed again. They smell," another daughter, Christina, would say with disgust in her voice. "Maya, did you really work for rich families before? Because you seem pretty incompetent to me," Nicole, the youngest, would taunt. They insulted her, belittled her, and made sure she knew exactly where she stood in their eyes beneath them. But Maya endured it all in silence because she had a secret growing inside her that was more powerful than any of their cruelty. 6 weeks passed. Maya's period was late and she knew. She could feel the difference in her body, the exhaustion, the slight nausea, the tenderness, but she needed to be sure. One morning, when everyone was out of the house, Maya drove to a pharmacy 30 minutes away where nobody would recognize her. She bought 3 pregnancy tests and drove back, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. In her small bathroom, she took all 3 tests, and one by one they all showed the same result. Positive. She was carrying Richard Whitmore's child. She was carrying the heir to a fortune, and she had no idea how much longer she could keep this secret. That same afternoon, disaster struck. Maya had been feeling sick all morning, and after helping Richard with his medication, she barely made it to the staff bathroom before she started vomiting violently. She thought she was alone, but she wasn't. Nicole, the youngest daughter, had been walking by and heard everything. She pressed her ear to the door, listening with growing excitement because Nicole had been suspicious of Maya for weeks. The moment Maya finished and came out of the bathroom, Nicole was standing there with a knowing smirk on her face. Well, 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 Nicole said slowly. "The maid is sick, how interesting." "It's just a stomach bug," Maya said quickly, trying to move past her. But Nicole blocked her path. "Really? Because it sounded like morning sickness to me. Are you pregnant, Maya?" No, Maya lied, but her voice betrayed her. Nicole's eyes lit up like she just struck gold. "Oh my God, you're pregnant." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and ran down the hallway, shouting, Mom, you need to hear this." Maya's blood turned to ice. She thought about running, about grabbing her things and escaping before this all exploded. But her legs wouldn't move. She was frozen in place, knowing that everything was about to fall apart. Within minutes, Victoria appeared with all 5 daughters trailing behind her like a pack of wolves who just caught the scent of blood. "Is it true?" Victoria demanded, her voice sharp as a knife. "Are you pregnant?" "No, ma'am, Maya tried to explain, but Victoria cut her off. "Diane, go get a pregnancy test from the pharmacy. Now," Victoria commanded. "Already got one in my bathroom," Diane said with a cruel smile, pulling out a box. "I've been watching her for weeks. I knew something was off." Victoria grabbed Maya's arm hard enough to bruise. "You're going to take this test right now, and we're all going to watch the results. If you refuse, you're fired and you'll be out on the street within the hour. Your choice." Maya looked around at the circle of hostile faces surrounding her and realized she had no choice at all. This was a trap she couldn't escape. "Fine," Maya said quietly, "I'll take it." 10 minutes later, they all stood in the main floor bathroom, watching as the test developed. Maya prayed for a miracle, but miracles weren't coming today. 2 pink lines appeared clear as day. Positive. The room exploded into chaos. All 5 daughters started yelling at once, hurling accusations and insults. Victoria's face went pale, then red with rage. "You filthy little gold digger," Diane screamed. "Who's the father? Which man did you trap?" "She probably got pregnant before she even came here," Christina spat. "She's trying to scam us." "Get her out of this house," Nicole shouted. But then, cutting through all the noise, came a voice that silenced everyone. "The baby is mine." Every head turned toward the doorway where Richard Whitmore sat in his wheelchair, his face set with a determination Maya had never seen before. He'd heard the commotion and wheeled himself downstairs to face the storm he knew was coming. "What did you just say?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I said the baby is mine," Richard repeated, louder this time. "I asked Maya to carry my child, the heir to everything I've built, and she agreed." The silence that followed was so heavy it felt like the air had turned to stone. And then, all hell broke loose. Victoria lunged toward Maya, but Richard positioned his wheelchair between them. "Touch her and you get nothing, not a single dime." Was Richard's protection enough to save Maya from a family that now saw her as their enemy? Or had this confession just painted a target on both their backs that would lead to something far darker than anyone could imagine? The war for the Whitmore fortune had officially begun. "Touch her and you get nothing, not a single dime." Richard's voice echoed through the mansion like a thunderclap, and for a moment, everyone froze. Victoria stood there with her hand still raised, her face twisted with rage, while her 5 daughters looked like they'd just watched their entire world collapse. Maya stood behind Richard's wheelchair, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might explode. Victoria slowly lowered her hand, but the fury in her eyes burned even hotter. "You did this on purpose," she hissed at Richard. "You got your little servant pregnant to spite us, to punish your own family." "My family?" Richard laughed bitterly. "You mean the wife who's been planning my funeral since the day the doctor gave me my diagnosis? The daughters who ask their boyfriends when I'm going to die so they can cash in, that family." Diane stepped forward, her face red with anger. "How dare you? We've been nothing but devoted to you." "Devoted to my bank account, you mean?" Richard shot back. "Don't act like I don't know what you all say behind my back. I've heard Marcus asking when he can start selling off my properties. I've seen you, Christina, taking pictures in this house for your Instagram, already planning how you'll show off your inheritance to your followers. You think I'm deaf and blind just because I'm dying." The daughters looked at each other, caught in their lies and not even bothering to deny it anymore. Victoria regained her composure, her voice turning cold and calculated. "Fine, you want to play this game, Richard. Let's be clear about what's happening here. This girl is a nobody from nowhere who's trying to trap you. And this baby, if there even is a baby, probably isn't even yours. She's been working here for 2 months. She could have got pregnant by anyone before she came here, or she could be sleeping with someone on the staff right now." "That's not true," Maya finally found her voice, stepping out from behind Richard. "I would never." "Shut up," Diane screamed at her. "Nobody's talking to you, you scheming little." Enough, Richard's voice cracked like a whip. Maya is carrying my child, my son, and I'm making sure that when I die he inherits everything. I've already called my lawyer, the will is being changed as we speak. The room fell into a stunned silence. Then Victoria started laughing, a cold, cruel laugh that sent chills down Maya's spine. "You think you're so smart, don't you, Richard?" Victoria said, her voice dripping with venom. "You think you can just give everything to some bastard child and we'll accept it? We'll fight you. We'll fight her. We'll tie this up in court for so long that the baby will be grown before it sees a penny." "Try it," Richard said calmly. "My lawyers are the best in Texas, and I'm making sure everything is ironclad. But here's what you need to understand. If anything happens to Maya or my child, if either of them gets hurt or threatened or harmed in any way, I've instructed my lawyers to make sure you all get nothing. Zero. Every single asset will go to charity. You'll be left with nothing but the clothes on your backs." Victoria's face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Try me," Richard said, his eyes hard as stone. "I've spent my whole life building an empire, and I'll burn it all down before I let vultures pick at it. Maya and my son are under my protection now. Anyone who tries to hurt them will regret it." He turned his wheelchair around to face Maya. "Pack your things. You're moving into the guest suite on the second floor next to my room. From now on, you're not the help, you're family." Maya's eyes filled with tears, but before she could respond, Richard wheeled himself out of the bathroom, leaving Maya alone with 5 women who looked at her like they wanted to rip her apart. The moment Richard was gone, Victoria stepped close to Maya, her voice a deadly whisper. "You made a big mistake, little girl, a very big mistake." Fam, if you're still with me on this wild journey, drop that like button right now and subscribe, because things are about to get darker than you can imagine. Comment below and tell me what you think is going to happen next. Now let's get back to Maya, because her nightmare was only just beginning. That night, Maya moved her few belongings into the guest suite like Richard had ordered. It was the most beautiful room she'd ever stayed in, a king-sized bed, a private bathroom with marble floors and windows overlooking the gardens. But it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison. She could hear the family downstairs, their voices raised in angry discussion. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. They were planning something. She could feel it in her bones. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on her door. Maya's heart jumped into her throat, but when she opened it, she found Richard's personal assistant, an older black woman named Lorraine who'd worked for the family for 20 years. "May I come in?" Lorraine asked quietly. Maya nodded and let her in, closing the door behind her. Lorraine looked at Maya with a mixture of concern and respect. "Girl, do you have any idea what you've just walked into?" "I'm starting to figure it out," Maya said softly. "No, you don't," Lorraine said, shaking her head. "I've worked for this family for 2 decades, and I've seen things that would make your blood run cold. Victoria Whitmore is not the kind of woman who takes losing gracefully, and those daughters of hers, they're just as ruthless as their mother taught them to be." "Mr. Whitmore said he'd protect me," Maya said, but her voice sounded uncertain even to her own ears. Lorraine sighed. "Richard's a good man and he means well, but baby, he's dying. In a few months, maybe less, he won't be here to protect you. And when he's gone, you'll be all alone in this house with people who hate you and want you dead." Maya felt tears welling up. "So what am I supposed to do?" "Get out of this house as soon as possible," Lorraine said urgently. "Whatever Richard's paying you, whatever promises he's made, it's not worth your life. These people will destroy you, Maya. They'll make it look like an accident, or they'll frame you for something, or they'll—" She stopped herself, her eyes filled with fear. "They'll what?" Maya pressed. Lorraine lowered her voice to barely a whisper. "Richard had a brother, 20 years ago, David Whitmore. He was supposed to inherit half the fortune, but he died in a car accident right before their father passed away. Everyone said it was tragic, just bad luck. But I was working here then and I heard things. Victoria and David had a huge fight the week before he died, and the brakes on his car had been tampered with, but the police never investigated because the family paid them off." Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "Are you saying she killed him?" "I'm saying Victoria Whitmore gets rid of obstacles," Lorraine said carefully. "And right now, you and that baby you're carrying are the biggest obstacles she's ever faced. Please, Maya, leave while you still can." Lorraine slipped out of the room as quietly as she'd come, leaving Maya alone with a terror that went bone deep. But leaving wasn't that simple. Maya had already accepted Richard's money. He'd transferred $50,000 to her mother's account as a down payment. Her family was already using it to pay off debts to get Jamal's medication to put food on the table. If she ran now, she'd be breaking her word to a dying man who trusted her, and her family would be left with nothing. She was trapped between a promise and a death threat, and there was no easy way out. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. The daughters went out of their way to make Maya's life miserable. They'd accidentally spill things on her, shove past her in hallways, whisper cruel things loud enough for her to hear. Christina posted a cryptic message on Instagram about gold diggers who infiltrate families, and her followers flooded the comments with speculation. But the worst was Victoria. She didn't yell or make threats. She just watched Maya with those cold, calculating eyes like a predator studying its prey and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Richard tried to shield Maya from the worst of it. He spent every day with her, talking about the future, about his son, about the legacy he wanted to build. He showed her documents from his lawyer, the updated will that left 80% of everything to the child Maya was carrying. He'd even set up a trust fund in her name worth millions. "You see," Richard said one afternoon, holding her hand, "you and our son will be taken care of. No matter what happens to me, you'll both be safe." But Maya couldn't shake Lorraine's warning. When Richard died, who would keep her safe then? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. One morning, 2 months into Maya's pregnancy, Richard woke up gasping for air. Maya called 911 and he was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said his condition had deteriorated rapidly. They gave him weeks now, not months. And that's when Victoria made her move. 3 days after Richard was hospitalized, Maya came back to the mansion to grab some of Richard's things. As she walked through the front door, she found Victoria waiting in the foyer with 2 large men in suits, men Maya had never seen before. "Maya, we need to have a conversation," Victoria said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "about your future." The 2 men stepped forward, blocking the exit behind her. Maya's hands instinctively went to her stomach, protecting the life growing inside her. "What do you want?" Maya asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Victoria pulled out a thick envelope. "Inside this envelope is a check for $200,000. You take it, sign a document saying the baby isn't Richard's, and you disappear. You go back to Los Angeles and never contact this family again." "And if I refuse?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Victoria's smile widened. "Then things get very unpleasant for you. You see, I've been doing some research. Your mother has a record, shoplifting from 10 years ago. Your brother Jamal, he was arrested for possession last year. And you lied on your application to work here. You said you had experience when you didn't. That's fraud, Maya. I could have you arrested and deported. Oh wait, you're not an immigrant, but I could still make your life a living hell." Maya felt her stomach drop. "You leave my family out of this." "Then take the money and leave," Victoria said coldly. "Because if you don't, I promise you'll regret it. And that baby you're carrying, accidents happen all the time, especially to young women who don't have anyone to protect them." The threat hung in the air like poison. Maya looked at the envelope, at Victoria's cruel face, at the 2 men blocking her exit. She thought about Richard lying in that hospital bed, too weak to help her. She thought about her family back in Los Angeles, vulnerable and exposed. She thought about the baby growing inside her, innocent and already in danger. And she made a decision that would either save her life or destroy it. "I'll take your offer," Maya said quietly, "but I need 3 days to think about the details. Let me visit Richard in the hospital one more time, say goodbye properly, and then I'll sign whatever you want." Victoria studied her suspiciously. "You have 24 hours, not 3 days. Come back here tomorrow at noon with your decision. If you tell Richard about this conversation, the offer disappears and the threats become very real. Do we understand each other?" "Yes," Maya whispered. Victoria nodded to the men, and they stepped aside to let Maya leave. Maya walked out of that mansion with her heart racing and her mind spinning. She had 24 hours to figure out how to survive a family that wanted her dead. But what Victoria didn't know was that Maya had already texted someone from the hospital, Richard's lawyer, a man named Gerald Washington who'd been Richard's friend for 30 years. And he was about to help Maya make a move that would change everything. Would Maya escape before Victoria's threats became deadly reality? Or was she already out of time in a game where the stakes were life and death? Maya sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital. her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she hadn't touched, staring at her phone. She'd sent the text to Gerald Washington, Richard's lawyer, 30 minutes ago, and every second that passed without a response felt like an eternity. Her 24-hour deadline was ticking away, and Victoria's threat echoed in her mind like a death sentence. Finally, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Memorial Hospital, 4th floor conference room in 1 hour. Come alone, delete this message." Maya's heart raced as she deleted the text and gathered her things. This was it. This was either her way out or the beginning of the end. An hour later, she found herself in a small conference room with Gerald Washington, a distinguished black man in his 60s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. He closed the door behind them and immediately started speaking in a low, urgent voice. "Richard told me this day would come," Gerald said, sitting across from her. "He said Victoria would try to force you out the moment he couldn't protect you anymore. Tell me everything." Maya told him about Victoria's offer, the threats against her family, the 24-hour deadline, and the 2 men who'd blocked her exit. Gerald listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every word. When she finished, Gerald leaned back and let out a long breath. "That woman is more dangerous than Richard ever wanted to admit, but here's what she doesn't know. Richard and I have been planning for this exact scenario for weeks. We knew she'd make a move the moment he ended up in this hospital." "What kind of plan?" Maya asked, hope flickering in her chest for the first time in days. Gerald pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "Richard is moving you out of Houston tonight, not tomorrow when Victoria expects you to come crawling back with your decision. Tonight, while they think they still have control." "Moving me where?" Maya's mind was racing. "Los Angeles," Gerald said. "Back to your home city, but not to your mother's address where they could find you. Richard purchased a property in Marina del Rey under a trust. 3-bedroom townhouse, gated community, 24-hour security. It's already in your name and it can't be traced back to Richard or his estate." Maya felt tears welling up. "He did all that." "He did more than that," Gerald continued. "He's been liquidating certain assets quietly over the past month, stocks, bonds, some real estate holdings that Victoria didn't even know he personally owned. He's moved approximately $8 million into an offshore trust for you and the baby. Money that's completely outside his main estate, money that Victoria and her daughters can't touch no matter what happens." Maya's hand went to her mouth. $8 million. She'd never even imagined that much money in her entire life. "But there's a catch," Gerald said seriously. "You have to leave tonight, and you can't tell anyone where you're going, not your mother, not your brothers, nobody. At least not for a few months until after the baby is born and Richard's estate is settled. If Victoria finds out where you are before then, she'll send people after you. Do you understand?" Maya nodded, her mind spinning. "But what about Richard? I can't just leave him here to die alone." "He knows," Gerald said gently. "I spoke with him this morning. He said to tell you that keeping you and his son safe is more important than saying goodbye. He said you've already given him more than he deserved, hope, kindness, and a future. He doesn't want you to risk that future by staying here one more day." Tears streamed down Maya's face. "Can I at least see him one more time, just to?" "No," Gerald cut her off firmly. "Victoria has people watching the hospital. If you visit Richard today, they'll know something's up. The only reason you're safe right now is because they think they've already won. We need to keep it that way until you're on that plane." "Plane?" Maya asked. "Private jet," Gerald corrected. "Leaving from a small airfield outside Houston at 9 p.m. tonight. I'll pick you up at 7 from wherever you're staying. Pack light, only what you can carry in one bag, leave everything else behind. Richard will have everything you need waiting for you in Los Angeles." Maya felt like she was in a dream or maybe a movie. This couldn't be real life, but Gerald's serious expression told her it was very, very real. "What about my things at the mansion?" Maya asked. "Leave them," Gerald said flatly. "Don't go back there. If you need clothes, buy new ones. If you had anything sentimental, I'm sorry, but it's not worth your life." Fam, if you're on the edge of your seat right now, hit that like button and subscribe because this escape is about to get intense. Drop a comment and tell me if you think Maya's going to make it out safely. Now let's get back to what happened next because Victoria was about to realize she'd been played. Maya spent the rest of the day in a hotel room Gerald had booked for her under a fake name, packing back and forth and watching the clock. At exactly 7 p.m., there was a knock on her door. She looked through the peephole and saw Gerald standing there alone. "Ready?" he asked when she opened the door. Maya grabbed her single duffel bag, the same one she'd arrived in Houston with months ago, and nodded. "Let's go." They took Gerald's car, a nondescript sedan that wouldn't draw attention. As they drove through Houston's evening traffic, Maya kept looking over her shoulder, expecting to see Victoria's men following them at any moment. "Relax," Gerald said, noticing her anxiety. "We're clear. I've been doing this kind of work for 30 years. I know how to move someone without being followed." They drove for 40 minutes to a small private airfield on the outskirts of the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. A sleek white private jet sat on the tarmac, looking impossibly expensive and surreal. "That's yours," Gerald said, pulling up next to it. A pilot came down the stairs to greet them. "Ms. Johnson, we're ready for departure whenever you are." Maya turned to Gerald, suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. "Thank you for everything. Please tell Richard that I—" "He knows," Gerald said warmly, pulling her into a brief hug. "He knows. Now go, start your new life, and Maya, don't come back to Texas until I call you and tell you it's safe. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, promise me." "I promise," Maya whispered. She climbed the stairs to the private jet, looking back one last time at Gerald, at Houston, at the life she was leaving behind. Then she stepped inside and the door closed behind her. The jet took off 20 minutes later, and Maya watched through the window as Texas got smaller and smaller below her, until it disappeared completely into the darkness. She was free, she was safe. She was carrying $8 million worth of security and a baby that would inherit a fortune. But back in Houston, all hell was about to break loose. The next morning, at exactly noon, Victoria Whitmore stood in the foyer of her mansion with her 2 hired men, waiting for Maya to show up and accept her ultimatum. Noon came and went. 12:30, 1 p.m. At 1:15, Victoria's phone rang. It was one of the hospital staff members she'd been paying to keep an eye on Richard's visitors. "Mrs. Whitmore, you told me to call if anything unusual happened. Gerald Washington was here late yesterday afternoon. He spent about 30 minutes with your husband in private, and then he left in a hurry." Victoria's blood went cold. Gerald Washington, Richard's oldest friend and his personal attorney, the one man who could help Richard move assets around without her knowledge. "Find out if that girl visited the hospital yesterday," Victoria barked into the phone. 5 minutes later, the answer came back. Maya Johnson had not visited Richard Whitmore at all yesterday. She hadn't been seen at the hospital since the day Richard was admitted. Victoria's hands started shaking with rage. She'd been played. That little servant girl had played her. "Find her," Victoria screamed at the 2 men. "Go to the mansion, search her room, find out where she went, now." The men rushed out, and 30 minutes later, they called back with news that made Victoria's world tilt on its axis. "Her room is empty, ma'am. Beds made, closets empty, bathrooms cleared out. Looks like she's been gone for at least a day, maybe more. And there's something else, we checked with the staff. Nobody's seen her since yesterday afternoon." Victoria dropped the phone and screamed so loud that her daughters came running from different parts of the house. "What happened?" Deanne asked, alarmed by her mother's rage. "She's gone," Victoria shrieked. "That little snake is gone, and she took Richard's bastard with her." "Gone where?" Christina asked. "I don't know." Victoria spun around, her eyes wild. "But Richard planned this. He and Gerald got her out of Houston while we were sitting here like fools thinking we had her trapped." Nicole stepped forward. "So what do we do?" Victoria's face hardened into something cold and cruel. "We find her. I don't care where she went or how well she's hidden. We find her and we make sure that baby never sees the light of day." "Mom, that's—" Diane started, but Victoria cut her off. "That baby is the only thing standing between us and Richard's entire fortune," Victoria shouted. "Every property, every business, every dollar he's made in 40 years, it's supposed to be ours. Ours, not some servant girl's welfare baby. I will not let some nobody from Los Angeles steal our inheritance." She pulled out her phone and made a call. When someone answered, she spoke in a voice that was pure ice. "It's Victoria Whitmore. I need you to find someone for me." A young black woman, 22 years old, pregnant, probably went back to Los Angeles. "Her name is Maya Johnson, and she has something that belongs to me. I'll pay whatever it costs, just find her." She hung up and looked at her daughters with cold determination. If Richard thinks he can protect her from across state lines while he's dying in a hospital bed, he's wrong. I've spent 30 years building this life, and I'm not about to let it slip away without a fight. But what Victoria didn't know was that Richard had planned for this too. He'd hired his own security team to watch over Maya in Los Angeles, former Secret Service agents who knew how to keep someone hidden and safe. He'd set up systems and protections that even Victoria's money and connections couldn't penetrate. The question wasn't whether Victoria would find Maya. The question was what would happen when Richard Whitmore took his last breath and the real battle for his fortune began. Because in Los Angeles, in a beautiful townhouse by the marina, Maya was finally breathing easy for the first time in months. She stood on her balcony overlooking the water, her hand on her growing belly, and whispered to the baby inside her. "We made it, little one. We're safe now. Your daddy made sure of that." But 3,000 miles away in Houston, Richard Whitmore lay in his hospital bed, his breathing shallow and labored, knowing that his time was running out. He'd saved his son and the woman who'd given him hope, but he wouldn't live to see the war that was coming. Would Maya and her baby survive what happened next? Or would Victoria's fury reach across state lines and destroy everything Richard had fought to protect? The clock was ticking, and the battle for the Whitmore fortune was about to become a matter of life and death. If you enjoyed the first part of this story, please don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notification bell, so when part 2 drops you'll be the first to know. And drop a comment below and tell me what country you're watching from. Let's see how far this tale is traveling across the world.